So I've discussed Young Justice in general, and I've more specifically discussed its less than stellar queer representation. What's left? Disability, of course. But wait, hold on. Is there even anything worth talking about here? After all, in a show like this, it wouldn't exactly be shocking if there was no disability rep to be found anywhere. But, actually, Young Justice has had disabled characters ever since the first season. Not a lot, and none on the main cast, but the point still stands. Out of the whole cast, there's really only 3 notable disabled characters to talk about. It also kind of lines up nicely in that there's one new one per season, which is not really relevant, but it is a neat coincidence. In Season 1, we have Paula nguyen-crock, Artemis's mother, who is a wheelchair user. In Season 2, Roy Harper, aka Arsenal, gets added to that list, having had his arm amputated to provide the material necessary to grow his clones. In Season 3, we have Barbara Gordon joining the roster in her role as Oracle, obviously another wheelchair user. In Season 1, Paula's role can basically be boiled down to the fact that she is Artemis's mother and an ex-supervillain. She quit the life after the injury that made her a wheelchair user in the first place. It's also this injury that caused her to take the fall for her husband and go to jail for 6 years. But when we meet her in the show, she is obviously out of jail, and has been raising Artemis basically on her own, it seems like. They seem to be pretty poorly off, financially speaking, and Paula encourages Artemis to take an offered scholarship in Gotham Academy, with the argument that it's the kind of opportunity she'd have given anything for, one that might have changed her path in life. We don't see much of her disability-wise in this season. The wiki states that she's unemployed but receives a disability pension, but that's also listed as canon in training, so it doesn't have any official in-series confirmation yet, if it ever will. But given she's disabled and presumably a convicted felon, it's depressingly realistic. She also uses a hospital model manual wheelchair. This actually is realistic, because the American healthcare system is a fucking nightmare, and active wheelchairs are goddamn expensive. I know I sure as hell wouldn't have one if the city didn't just take a look at me and go, yeah, you need this, and then hand me one for nothing. So given Paula is living off of a disability pension with possibly some extra help from Batman or Green Arrow as of 2010, and she raised a daughter on that money while consistently keeping a roof over their heads, yeah, her having to make do with this clunky monstrosity is actually very believable. In Season 2, we don't really see much of her, but she's around to mourn for Artemis when she fakes her death, and give Jade a talk about treasuring the time she has with her daughter, which Jade will proceed to ignore entirely. It is in Season 3 that her next real standout moment happens, and it's... well, I have very conflicted feelings about it. It's after she has found out that Artemis is going out doing vigilante work again. She takes her aside to berate her about this, remind her of the risks she definitely already knows she's taking, argue that maybe she should actually get together with Will because Leanne needs a mother, as if Artemis isn't already a mother figure to Leanne, despite being in a completely platonic relationship with Will, who is her brother-in-law. And, of course, this.
Which doesn't mean...
Look at me, Artemis! Look at your friend Barbara! Is this what you want for yourself? What will it take to convince you?
Like, for starters, way to project your own issues onto your daughter there. But, for real, let's pick apart what she says here. In an attempt to argue against Artemis putting herself in harm's way, which is overall a noble goal and a realistic reaction for a mother to have, the very first thing she does after digging into the dead boyfriend wound is point to herself and to Barbara, another wheelchair user, and decry their lives as horrific. Which, of course, to me screams less of a concerned mother and more of some very deep-seated internalized ableism, which is only further strengthened if you assume that this Barbara was paralyzed in the same or a similar way as she was in The Killing Joke, because, funnily enough, that had nothing to do with Barbara being Batgirl. and everything to do with her being Commissioner Gordon's daughter. The Joker would have gone after her regardless. Paula's point is moot unless the real point she's trying to make is that being a wheelchair user itself is something you should attempt to avoid to such an extent that you should stop doing everything that carries even the slightest risk of severe injury. So no more driving, no skiing, certainly no motorcycles. Just wrap yourself up in bubble wrap and never do anything dangerous, on the off chance that you might become disabled. Obviously, I'm kidding a little bit. All of the things I just mentioned are still significantly safer than putting on a costume and running around hunting down superpowered criminals, but that doesn't change the fact that the life had nothing to do with Barbara's spinal injury, unless you count her father's connection to Batman, and if you do that, then Artemis is in exactly the same amount of danger, regardless of if she's personally going out as Huntress or not. Now, internalized ableism is definitely a thing, and Paula has enough issues for me to have no trouble believing she'd have a bad case of it, which is where my torn feelings on the matter come in. Because, on the one hand, of course it stings to see one of exactly 3 disabled people on the show espouse these kinds of views, but at least she's not the only character, so perhaps the others can save it? Well, if one of them is, it certainly won't be Roy. So, Roy Harper, the real Roy Harper, who we meet in Season 2. He's, understandably, very messed up by the fact that he's effectively been in a coma for the last 8 years while someone else has been living his life. He's very angry and very traumatized, but as far as disability rep goes, he falls firmly into the realm of superpower negating disability. Or, well, the sci-fi version of that, anyhow. Because after he takes off on his revenge quest against Lex Luthor, barely out of the hospital and still down a fucking arm, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he were a little bit suicidal right now, he gets this fancy weaponized arm and his new code name from Luthor instead of killing him. And that's that. We don't see enough of him afterwards to get a real feel for what his life is like now. He barely features at all in Season 3. In Season 2, he's around, but mostly as an angry, chaotic force of nature. Season 2, in general, had so many characters to juggle that there wasn't really time to sit with him and analyze how he was doing, and to show us any of the more specific workings of his arm, or anything, really. Honestly, I will freely admit I completely forgot he existed when I first started thinking about making this video. I remembered after a few days, but still. Given he was such a big plot hook from Season 1, I'd have figured we'd have spent at least a little time on him. But we didn't, and as I said, he barely featured at all in Season 3, so there you have it. So we move on to Season 3, and the introduction of Barbara Gordon as Oracle. Of course, she was already on the show as Batgirl in Season 1 and Season 2, but this is where she becomes relevant to this conversation. She is by far the best on this list, but given the givens, that's not actually much in the way of glowing praise, is it? But no, actually, I really do like her. She's funny, she's capable, and while I don't personally ship her with Dick all that much, it's actually really fucking nice to see a disabled person portrayed as desirable and asexual being for once. Like, it's not on the level of Connor and McGann, or these two, or anything like that, but it's obvious Dick loves her and thinks she's attractive, and it's probably really depressing how happy I am about this measly little scrap, but there you have it. Side note, just because I am happy about this does not mean that I'm not still very asexual myself, thank you very much. Now, obviously, there are some tropes inherent to having her be the guy in the chair, but she's Oracle, that's what she does. She doesn't need to be out on the battlefield in a tricked-out chair that's also a missile launcher. She's an excellent hacker and an invaluable asset to the team regardless. But on the topic of that chair, Young Justice continues a trend which I have been continuously so exhausted by whenever Oracle makes an appearance in almost any piece of media ever. Namely, this fucking chair. I already stated that it's a fucking nightmare when I talked about Paula, but because it's realistic for her to have it, I didn't feel the need to delve any deeper. Let me do so now. Hospital models are heavier than active models, so it's physically harder to wheel yourself around. Additionally, both the backrest and the armrests will be restricting her movement and how much heft she can put behind each push. So it's both heavier and physically harder to wheel herself around in this thing than it would be in an active model. Furthermore, this one in particular looks way too wide for her, which will only put more unnecessary strain on her muscles, and really the whole thing gives me sympathetic back and shoulder pain just looking at it. But why am I actually so mad about that? Well, she's Barbara Gordon. She's Oracle. She works for Bruce Wayne. She might even be his daughter-in-law someday. This is in no way comparable to Paula's situation. Paula nguyen-crock is living off disability pension, and because life is a fucking nightmare, if she ever gains over 2,000 in savings, her benefits will be cut. Barbara Gordon's possible future father-in-law, who has known her since she was a literal child, is a multi-billionaire. She lives in a very comfortable apartment with her boyfriend, who is also very fucking rich. She does not, in any way, have to put up with this hunk of junk. She is surrounded, constantly, every day, by Justice League level tech in her own home, but she can't get a fucking active wheelchair. I call bullshit. I call so much bullshit, oh my god. You could maybe try to make the argument that she wouldn't want to take the handout, except no you couldn't. I do not know a single wheelchair user who is currently stuck with a hospital model who wouldn't jump at the chance to upgrade to something even slightly better. Barbara is a practical woman. She would not let a completely inane thing like pride get in the way of getting a wheelchair that was better suited to her. This is, if you couldn't tell, a long-running issue of mine. But yeah, that's it. That's the 3 disabled characters in Young Justice, and I've gotta say, overall the performance is underwhelming. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, consider liking it and maybe subscribing. I will be back here Thursday after next. Bye.